In the crisp air of July 2022, Marcy Olson, a vibrant and popular travel blogger, embarked on what should have been another celebrated adventure. Her sights were set on the rugged, high-altitude expanse of the Treelane Ridge Trail, a place whispered about for its breathtaking views and challenging terrain. Known for her adventurous spirit and knack for capturing the heart of a landscape through her lens, Marcy was a familiar face to thousands who followed her every journey online. She was meticulous in her preparation, and this expedition was no different. She began her trip like many before, with a short, energetic video uploaded from the dusty trailhead parking lot. The sun glinted off her parked SUV, and the towering pines of the Rockies framed the shot. Marcy's voice, warm and enthusiastic, described the conditions and her excitement for the climb ahead. She smiled, a vision of preparedness with her sturdy backpack and hiking boots. But looking back, after years of fruitless searching and agonizing silence, her family and devoted followers would be left haunted by one chilling detail almost imperceptible within that seemingly innocuous clip. It was a flicker, a distortion in the background, a shadow moving with an unnatural stealth. Marcy, focused on her camera and the grandeur before her, never noticed it, but in the stillness of the recorded moment, it was undeniably there, a silent observer. And it wasn't hers. The shadow's presence, though brief and indistinct, cast a long, ominous pall over the entire narrative of Marcy's disappearance. It hinted at an unseen element, a watcher in the wilderness who was not part of her intended audience. Was this a fleeting wildlife encounter, or something far more sinister lurking just beyond the edges of her frame? The question hung unanswered, a dark seed of doubt planted in the minds of those desperate for any clue. Investigators would later pore over this initial footage frame by frame. They enhanced the shadows, adjusted the contrast, trying to decipher the shape and size of the anomaly. Was it a person? Was it an animal? The ambiguity only fueled the speculation. The shadow's stillness, then its subtle, deliberate movement, felt deeply unsettling against the otherwise joyful backdrop of Marcy's pre-hike excitement. This anomaly, this uninvited guest in her final public moments, became the first stark reminder that Marcy's ascent into the mountains might have been an encounter with more than just nature's formidable beauty. It suggested that her solo journey might not have been as solitary as everyone believed, and that the wild, unforgiving landscape held secrets far deeper and darker than any her viewers had ever imagined. The Treelane Ridge Trail, once a symbol of adventure, now harbored a chilling premonition. The presence of this unknown entity in the background of her farewell message turned a straightforward missing person case into something far more complex and disturbing. It raised immediate questions about who else might have been present at the trailhead and why they remained unseen and unacknowledged. The shadow was a silent, spectral preface to the mystery that was about to unfold, signaling that Marcy's adventure was perhaps already compromised before she even took her first step onto the trail. The clarity of Marcy's smile in the video contrasted sharply with the growing unease inspired by the shadow. This dissonance was a powerful tool for investigators, a tangible inconsistency that demanded explanation. It suggested that the narrative of a simple hiking accident or getting lost might be far too simplistic to explain what truly happened on Treelane Ridge. Her followers, initially concerned, now felt a prickle of fear. The warmth of Marcy's personality, so evident in her videos, now seemed vulnerable, almost naive, against the backdrop of this lurking presence. The wilderness, often romanticized, was suddenly revealed as a place of potential unseen threats, where even a well-prepared solo traveler could become a target. The shadow became the first piece of cryptic evidence, a phantom at the edge of the frame, presaging the deeper enigmas to come. It was a subtle detail, easily missed by the casual viewer, but for those who later became consumed by Marcy's story, it was the starting point of a profound and terrifying rabbit hole. The shadow's unexplained appearance served as a potent curiosity trigger, ensuring that viewers would be eager to see what happened next. desperate to understand the context of that unsettling background presence. It was the first hint that Marcy's journey was far from the idyllic escape she intended. The visual of Marcy, so full of life and anticipation, juxtaposed with the ambiguous, almost predatory stillness of the shadow, created an immediate emotional investment. It made her relatable and her potential peril feel undeniably real. This wasn't just a news story. It was the potential unraveling of a life, shadowed by an unseen threat that had been present from the very beginning of her final recorded moments. The shadow was a silent warning, a chilling omen that the adventure was already compromised. Marcy Olsen's final social media post painted a stark, almost unsettling picture. It was a photograph of a tall pine tree, its bark rough and ancient, marked with a distinct blaze of red tape. The image was shared just hours before she was expected to reach a cell-service dead zone on the ascent. Hikers who were intimately familiar with the Treeline Ridge Trail, many of whom frequented that particular section, stated unequivocally that no such markers existed there. This was not a well-known landmark, nor a common trail feature. The red tape seemed out of place, an unnatural intrusion into the wild landscape. It raised immediate questions. Was this a new marker, placed by Marcy herself, perhaps indicating a detour or a point of interest she planned to document? Or was it something left by someone else, a signal intended for a specific observer, or a warning? The discrepancy between Marcy's post and the known conditions of the trail sent a ripple of concern through the online community, and more urgently, through the law enforcement agencies, beginning to piece together her last known movements. The GPS data from Marcy's device, meticulous for the initial hours of her hike, transmitted its last signal just 3 hours after she began. This cessation of data was initially attributed to a presumed technical issue, a common occurrence in remote, rugged terrain where satellite signals can be fickle. However, the timing of her final outgoing text message to her sister, Sarah, complicated this simple explanation of device failure. The text, seemingly mundane, contained a seemingly innocuous question about family plans for the upcoming week. But its timestamp, when cross-referenced with the GPS cutoff, created a temporal paradox investigators couldn't ignore. If her device had failed at 3 hours, how could it have sent a text message substantially later? The paradox suggested that either the GPS had malfunctioned independently, or the device had been turned off and then back on, or that the text message was sent from a different location entirely. The red-taped tree marker in her last photograph suddenly took on amplified significance. Was this the intended location Marcy was trying to convey? Was she trying to signal something about her surroundings when her GPS failed? Detectives from the local sheriff's department, working in conjunction with park authorities, began to meticulously retrace Marcy's known route. They interviewed park rangers, checked trail logs, and spoke with any hikers who might have been in the vicinity that day. The absence of any record of red tape markers in that specific area became a persistent, nagging anomaly. It suggested that Marcy might have been off the main trail, or that the marker had been deliberately placed to mislead or to communicate a hidden message. The implication was chilling. If Marcy was indeed deviating from the marked path, and if the red tape was not her own, then she may have been lured or guided somewhere. The GPS data cutoff, when scrutinized alongside the text message, suggested a more complex scenario than simply becoming lost. It could imply that her device was deliberately disabled, or that she was forced to turn it off and on, potentially under duress. The fact that the red tape wasn't a recognized trail marker meant that any search efforts relying solely on the official trail map or ranger knowledge would miss this crucial piece of evidence, or wherever it led. It implied a hidden, unmarked path, a clandestine route perhaps known only to a select few. This notion added a layer of deliberate concealment to the unfolding mystery. Investigators began to consider the possibility that Marcy's disappearance was not an accident, but potentially a targeted event. The red tape, once a simple photographic detail, transformed into a cryptic clue, a breadcrumb left behind in the wilderness. Its unnatural presence felt like a deliberate signpost, but to what precisely, no one could yet say. The investigators also started examining Marcy's recent social media activity and correspondence for anyone who might have had an unusual interest in her travels or her presence on Treelane Ridge. Was the red tape a message for someone she knew, or a lure for someone unknown? The more they looked, the more the trail seemed to diverge from a simple missing hiker scenario into something far more deliberate and orchestrated. The red tape was the first tangible signpost of this darker, more complex path. As the days turned into weeks, the initial mobilization for Marcy Olson's return escalated into an unprecedented large-scale search operation. Teams comprised of experienced climbers, skilled trackers, and dedicated volunteers scoured every inch of the Treelane Ridge Trail and its surrounding wilderness. Drones equipped with thermal imaging capabilities buzzed overhead, their cameras scanning the dense forests and treacherous ravines. Specially trained search dogs, their noses to the ground, worked tirelessly through the arduous terrain. Yet, despite these exhaustive efforts, no trace of Marcy, no sign of her backpack, her tent, or any of her equipment was ever found. In parallel with the physical search, law enforcement agencies initiated a thorough investigation into Marcy's personal life, looking for any potential leads or motives. Prominent among those interviewed was Marcy's ex-boyfriend, a man who had recently been collaborating with her, assisting in the editing of her travel videos. His insights into her work and her recent state of mind were considered crucial. He presented himself as deeply concerned, offering full cooperation with the authorities. During the course of their inquiries, a neighbor provided investigators with a disquieting piece of information. They reported witnessing the ex-boyfriend burning a large hard drive in his backyard 2 days after Marcy was officially reported missing. When questioned about this unusual activity, the ex-boyfriend claimed it was merely routine digital decluttering, an unrelated disposal of old, personal data. He maintained that it had absolutely no connection to Marcy's disappearance. However, investigators noted something peculiar about his demeanor when they asked a specific question. While he appeared outwardly cooperative, his reaction to the inquiry about the hard drive was, in their professional assessment, unusually guarded. He hesitated, his gaze flickered, and his explanation, while plausible on the surface, didn't entirely assuage their suspicions. The burning of sensitive data so soon after a colleague's disappearance struck them as a significant red flag. This detail, the burning of the hard drive, quickly became a focal point of the investigation. Law enforcement understood that digital footprints could be erased, but the act itself, so close in time to Marcy's vanishing, suggested a potential attempt to destroy incriminating evidence. Was it merely a coincidence, or was he trying to cover something up? The ex-boyfriend's proximity to Marcy, his recent collaboration, and this suspicious disposal of data created a compelling, albeit circumstantial, case. Detectives began to explore the nature of Marcy's relationship with her ex-boyfriend. Were there lingering tensions? Had there been recent disputes? While no concrete evidence of conflict emerged publicly, the lingering uncertainty fueled their focus on him. His claim of unrelated data disposal felt like a convenient explanation, one that relied on blind trust rather than verifiable fact. The neighbor's testimony was crucial. Without it, the burning of a hard drive could have gone unnoticed. It highlighted the importance of eyewitness accounts, even seemingly minor observations, in cracking open seemingly impenetrable cases. The investigators made it a priority to verify the ex-boyfriend's alibi for the entire period Marcy was missing, hoping to find inconsistencies or corroborating evidence for his claims. As the search for Marcy yielded nothing but silence and the vast indifference of the wilderness, attention increasingly turned towards human involvement. The ex-boyfriend, with his admitted connection to Marcy's work and the suspicious hard drive incident, became a person of significant interest. The investigators needed to understand precisely what was on that drive and why he felt compelled to destroy it so urgently. The family, meanwhile, clung to any sliver of hope, their pain compounded by the lack of answers. They cooperated fully with the investigation, providing access to Marcy's communications and personal belongings. Every detail, no matter how small, was scrutinized for its potential to shed light on her fate. The ex-boyfriend's unusual response to the hard drive question was a detail that would continue to trouble the lead investigators, a small but persistent itch that suggested a deeper narrative was being withheld. What exactly had been on that hard drive? Was it recordings of previous hikes, unedited footage that might contain clues? Or was it something more personal, something that could explain a motive for foul play? The ex-boyfriend's vague assertion of routine decluttering felt profoundly inadequate when measured against the gravity of Marcy's disappearance. The unanswered questions surrounding the hard drive left a chasm of suspicion in the investigative process. 3 days before Marcy Olson embarked on her fateful trek up Treeline Ridge, she made a routine phone call to her mother. It was a casual conversation, filled with the usual familial pleasantries, but it contained a detail that, at the time, was dismissed as a trivial observation. Marcy mentioned, almost as an aside, that she thought she might have seen someone twice during one of her recent, shorter hikes in the area. She concluded the remark lightly, with a shrug in her tone, saying, "Could be nothing." Her mother, a woman named Elena, recalled this part of the conversation with a sense of unease that has only grown with the passage of time. At the time, Marcy's light inflection suggested she wasn't genuinely alarmed. It sounded like a passing thought, a fleeting curiosity about encountering the same stranger on 2 separate occasions, a minor anomaly chalked up to coincidence in a world where people often share the same hiking trails. However, re-listening to the audio recording of that voicemail months later, after the full horror of Marcy's disappearance had sunk in, Elena heard something entirely different. Beneath the casual phrasing, a subtle tremor of anxiety seemed to bleed through. The lightness she had perceived initially now felt like a veneer, a practiced attempt to downplay her own apprehension. The words, "could be nothing," now resonated with a chilling double meaning. Investigators, now desperate for any clue that could illuminate Marcy's mindset in the days leading up to her hike, seized upon this recalled detail. They obtained the original audio file of the voicemail and subjected it to acoustic analysis. While the technology couldn't magically reveal hidden intentions, the subtle shifts in Marcy's vocal cadence, the almost imperceptible pauses, and a slight quickening of her breath when she mentioned the sightings, were indeed indicative of underlying unease. This new interpretation shifted the narrative significantly. It suggested that Marcy might have been carrying a seed of nervousness, a nascent fear, about someone or something she encountered in the wilderness just prior to her planned solo expedition. The casual dismissal of her own observation now appeared less like a sign of unconcern and more like a conscious effort to reassure herself, and perhaps her mother, that everything was under control. Detectives began to question whether this sighting was indeed nothing. Who was this person she saw twice? Were they a regular hiker, a park employee, or someone else entirely? The fact that Marcy singled out what appeared to be the same individual on 2 separate occasions indicated a level of distinctiveness that set them apart from the usual passing hikers. This stranger, whoever they were, had managed to register in Marcy's mind as noteworthy. The investigators broadened their inquiries, seeking information about any individuals who might have been seen repeatedly in the vicinity of the Treeline Ridge Trail trailhead in the weeks leading up to Marcy's hike. They canvassed local businesses, park ranger stations, and discussed the possibility with other frequent hikers. The aim was to identify if this stranger could be pinpointed, and if so, to understand their background and their reason for being in that particular area. Marcy's family was deeply affected by this revelation. It meant that her solo hike wasn't undertaken with a completely clear and untroubled mind. The idyllic adventure she intended might have been tinged with a pre-existing apprehension, a sense that she was being watched or followed. This realization made her vulnerability at the trailhead even more pronounced. The ambiguity surrounding the sighting was frustrating. Was Marcy observing a threat, or simply a solitary individual enjoying the solitude of the mountains? The distinction was critical. If it was a threat, then her disappearance took on a far more sinister complexion, pointing towards a deliberate act of malice rather than a tragic accident. The analysis of the voicemail served as a crucial reminder that perceptions of tone can be profoundly subjective, especially when filtered through memory and traumatic experience. What seemed like a casual remark in the light of day could, with the weight of tragedy, reveal a hidden depth of fear. The uninvited presence of this unknown person, twice observed, now stood as a significant puzzle piece in the unraveling mystery of Marcy's fate. It suggested that her journey might have been shadowed from its very inception. In the aftermath of Marcy Olsen's widely publicized disappearance, the internet, a vast and often unmoderated space, became a breeding ground for speculation and conspiracy. Shortly after news of her vanishing hit national headlines, an anonymous user on Reddit began posting under a pseudonym. These posts, scattered across various true crime and local forums, consistently peddled a narrative of media lies and fake hikers, subtly disparaging the official accounts and casting doubt on the authenticity of the events being reported. The tone of these posts was consistently defensive, almost aggressively so, when discussing Marcy Olsen. They questioned her motives, her experience, and the veracity of her online persona as a seasoned adventurer. These anonymous pronouncements, while seemingly the ramblings of armchair theorists, began to attract attention from digital forensic analysts and law enforcement who were monitoring online discourse surrounding the case. Investigators, using sophisticated tracking tools, began to meticulously trace the digital fingerprints of this anonymous Reddit user. While direct attribution proved challenging due to the user's use of proxy servers and other anonymizing techniques, patterns in their posting habits, their IP address geolocations, and the timing of their activity offered leads. The digital breadcrumbs, though faint, eventually pointed towards an individual with a tangential connection to the local hiking community. The individual in question was not a close friend or associate of Marcy, but someone who had crossed her path socially and professionally in a limited capacity. Records indicated he was loosely affiliated with a local outdoor enthusiast group that Marcy had once collaborated with for a product endorsement shoot a few years prior. This connection, while seemingly minor, provided a plausible link for the pattern of focused, albeit negative, commentary. Law enforcement obtained a warrant and conducted a search of the individual's residence. The primary focus was on any electronic devices or documents that might corroborate their online activities. The search itself was conducted with a degree of urgency, driven by the anonymous poster's consistent and peculiar commentary on the case. Inside the man's detached garage, amidst the organized clutter of camping gear and outdoor equipment, investigators made a startling discovery. Tucked away beneath a workbench, they found a detailed topographical map of the Treeline Ridge area. This was not a standard park map. It was a more intricate, large-scale representation of the terrain. What made it particularly significant were the numerous handwritten markings scrawled across its surface in red ink. These markings were not simple annotations of known trails. They appeared to depict hidden routes, clandestine campsites, and points of interest that were entirely absent from official park records. Some markings even seemed to suggest areas of difficult or dangerous terrain, marked with symbols that implied caution or even avoidance. The level of detail and the specific nature of these annotations suggested an intimate knowledge of the wilderness, a knowledge that went far beyond that of a casual hiker. The map immediately became a critical piece of evidence. It suggested that the anonymous Reddit poster possessed insider information about the area, information that might be relevant to Marcy's disappearance. The implication was that this individual, who had been so vocal in discrediting the official narrative, may have been privy to, or even involved in, activities in the wilderness that were not sanctioned or documented. Investigators were now faced with a new line of inquiry. This individual clearly had a vested interest in how the case was perceived publicly, and he possessed detailed knowledge of the very terrain where Marcy vanished. Was his online commentary an attempt to deflect attention, or was he genuinely trying to shape a misleading narrative? The map's cryptic markings seemed to hold clues to the true nature of his involvement, or his knowledge of the hidden depths of the tree-lined ridge wilderness. The discovery of the map, with its secrets etched in red ink, opened a new, potentially dangerous, avenue in the investigation. 5 months had passed since Marcy Olson was last seen. The initial surge of media attention and public outcry had begun to wane, replaced by the slow, grinding process of an unsolved case. In the vast majority of jurisdictions, after such a protracted period with no substantive leads or signs of life, a missing person is officially presumed dead. Marcy Olson's case was no exception. Authorities declared her legally deceased, a solemn pronouncement that brought a painful, albeit official, sense of closure to the presumed tragedy for some. Yet, for the thousands who had followed Marcy's passionate storytelling and vibrant life online, the story was far from over. In a strange and poignant twist, Marcy's Instagram account, untouched since her disappearance, continued to gain followers. Her curated online world, once a testament to her adventurous spirit, had become a digital memorial, a place where fans shared memories, posted tributes, and continued to engage with the content she had so lovingly created. This virtual afterlife stood in stark contrast to the grim reality of her presumed fate. Amidst this digital vigil, Marcy's sister, Sarah, found herself increasingly distressed by the actions of certain online communities. She openly accused some internet sleuths of exploiting her family's grief for their own morbid curiosity. The relentless theorizing, the sensationalized discussions, and the endless reposting of Marcy's images felt, to Sarah, like a desecration of her sister's memory. She pleaded for respect and a cessation of the invasive online speculation. Then, late one night, a message arrived through a secure messaging platform, Telegram, within a group dedicated to discussing unsolved mysteries and local folklore. The message was brief, cryptic, and deeply unsettling. It read, "Stop searching. She doesn't need to be found." The sender's username was a generic string of numbers and letters designed for anonymity. The sender quickly realized the mistake of leaving a traceable digital footprint and deleted the message almost immediately. However, the ephemeral nature of digital communication rarely means true erasure. The group administrators, alerted by the strange and alarming message, managed to secure a log of recent communications, and within that log, a single vital piece of information remained: the approximate location from which the message had been sent. The traceable location, stripped of its anonymity, pointed to a small, unassuming town. It was a place that, under normal circumstances, would likely have garnered little attention from anyone outside its immediate vicinity. But to the investigators piecing together Marcy Olson's final days, this town was alarmingly close. It was located just 20 miles from the Treeline Ridge Trail trailhead, the last known location where Marcy had been seen alive. This anonymous message transformed presumption into a concrete, albeit chilling, possibility. The suggestion that Marcy doesn't need to be found implied knowledge of her status and perhaps her whereabouts by someone who wanted the search to cease. The proximity of the sender to the actual search area suggested that this individual was not an idle observer, but someone within the geographical orbit of the events themselves. The message, though quickly deleted, served as a stark reminder that while the official search had ended, the human drama and the underlying mystery were far from over. Someone out there knew something, and they wanted the world to believe Marcy was forever lost to the wilderness. The question now was, who were they, and why did they want the search to stop? The geographical clue, however limited, represented the first tangible, though disturbing, lead in months, reigniting a flicker of desperate hope and a fresh wave of dread. 6 hikers, their plans disrupted by exceptionally heavy spring runoff, found themselves compelled to alter their planned route. The unusually vigorous meltwater had rendered a section of the Treeline Ridge Trail treacherous, forcing them to seek an alternative path, a detour that led them off the well-trodden, designated track. They ventured onto a less-used spur, hoping to reconnect with the main trail further up the mountain. It was as they navigated this impromptu, muddy descent, a challenging scramble near a steep rock slope, that one member of their party slipped. In their attempt to regain balance and catch themselves, their hand brushed against something firm yet yielding, buried beneath loose scree and mud. Their fingers closed around what felt like a hard, metallic surface. Puzzled, they dislodged it from its muddy tomb. It was a camera. Caked in grime and mud, its casing encrusted with dirt, it looked as though it had been buried for a considerable time. The hikers, recognizing its potential significance, carefully retrieved it, noting its position and the surrounding geology before continuing their journey, eager to reach safety and report their find. They understood that this object, likely lost or discarded, might hold valuable information. Upon returning to civilization and reporting their discovery, the camera was handed over to the local authorities. The process of meticulously cleaning and preserving the delicate electronic device, especially after prolonged exposure to the elements, was a painstaking undertaking. Due to the delicate nature of the retrieval, the potential for data corruption, and the need for specialized examination, it took authorities a full 6 days to properly process the recovered camera. The forensic technicians worked with extreme care, aware that the memory card inside could hold the last moments of Marcy Olson's life. Their primary objective was to retrieve any intact data without further damaging the device or the memory itself. The suspense was palpable as they managed to access the camera's internal components. When they finally managed to review the memory card, the footage was remarkably intact. Despite its ordeal buried in the earth, a significant portion of the recorded video had been preserved. The last clip on the card was exceptionally short, lasting only 43 seconds. It was a stark, raw snippet of what appeared to be Marcy Olson's final conscious moments, and its contents would change everything investigators thought they knew about her disappearance. The brevity of the clip underscored the suddenness of whatever event transpired. 43 seconds was not enough time for a gradual descent into peril. It suggested an abrupt, violent interruption. The fact that the camera had survived and its footage remained accessible was a small miracle, but the content of those final seconds would bring no comfort, only a profound and unsettling revelation. The camera, when it began to record, showed a clear view of Marcy setting her phone on a rock, its screen illuminated. She was speaking directly to herself, or perhaps to the imagined audience of her followers, her voice laced with observations about the thin air at the high altitude. Her demeanor seemed relaxed, focused on the task of documenting her journey. But then the atmosphere in the footage shifted dramatically. Her expression tightened, her eyes widened slightly, and her voice, which had been steady moments before, dropped to a hushed, nearly inaudible tone. The casual observer wouldn't have noticed it immediately, but etched onto her face was a dawning realization, a seed of fear that began to sprout. "You're not supposed to be here," she whispered, her voice barely a breath against the wind's low sigh. The words were directed at someone or something outside the frame of her camera. The sudden shift in her tone, the hushed delivery, indicated not a casual observation, but a direct, fearful confrontation. Then, the camera began to tumble. The frame lurched violently, twisting and turning as the device fell to the ground. The final seconds were a chaotic blur of upside-down images, muffled sounds, and indistinct movement against the earthy texture of the soil and rocks. Amidst this disorienting chaos, a single, desperate word was unmistakably whispered, almost swallowed by the sounds of the struggle. Stop. This 43-second clip was not the end of a tragic accident. It was the beginning of a terrifying new chapter in the investigation. It was a silent testament to a violent encounter, a brutal interruption of a life. And the final, frozen frame held a singular detail that would dramatically narrow the focus of the search for Marcy's assailant. The final, agonizing footage from Marcy, Olsen's recovered camera, began with an almost serene depiction of her solo hike. She was seen calmly placing her phone on a weathered rock, its screen glowing in the Andean sunlight as she set about documenting her ascent. Her voice, clear and infused with the enthusiasm of a seasoned vlogger, resonated with descriptions of the thinning air and the majestic panoramic views. Her usual confident, upbeat tone offered a sense of normalcy, of an adventure unfolding as planned. Her focus was entirely on the breathtaking scenery and the technical aspects of her recording, her camera lens capturing the rugged beauty of the high-altitude trail. She meticulously adjusted her position, ensuring the best angle and light for her audience. The initial moments were designed to capture the essence of her journey, a familiar ritual for her thousands of followers. However, the seemingly tranquil scene was shattered with an abrupt and palpable shift. Marcy's relaxed expression dissolved, replaced by a sudden, profound change that rippled across her face. Her eyes widened, her breath hitched, and a flicker of raw fear ignited within them. Her posture stiffened, betraying an immediate awareness of something terribly wrong. Quietly, almost a whisper lost to the vastness of the mountains, she uttered the words that would forever haunt the investigators and her family. Her voice, stripped of its former confidence, now carried a chilling tone of disbelief and dread. "You're not supposed to be here," she murmured, her gaze fixed on something beyond the view of her own device. The words were not an accusation, but a desperate recognition of an unwelcome, unexpected presence. The implication was clear. Marcy had not been alone. Someone, or something, had intruded upon her solitude, an intrusion she recognized as fundamentally wrong and likely dangerous. This was no accidental encounter with another hiker. This was an encounter she instinctively understood violated a boundary. Immediately following her whispered warning, the camera violently lurched. It slipped from its precarious perch on the rock, tumbling end over end down the uneven terrain. The once stable frame dissolved into a chaotic kaleidoscope of fragmented images as the device bounced and skittered across the rocky ground. The clear mountain landscape was replaced by a disorienting blur of earth, sky, and rock. The last few seconds of the recording were a frantic, upside-down mess. Muffled sounds, indistinct movements, and the harsh scrape of rock against metal filled the audio. It was a terrifying glimpse into a struggle, a desperate fight for survival playing out in a silent, violent ballet. Amidst the cacophony of the fall and the struggle, a single word, a final, desperate plea, was barely discernible, a faint whisper against the sounds of chaos. "Stop!" Investigators, their faces grim, froze the final frame of the erratic footage. It was a snapshot of pure chaos, a freeze frame of desperate resistance. And in that jumbled, earth-toned image, amidst the dirt and debris, a single detail emerged that would dramatically shift the trajectory of their investigation. Entering the frame, just at the edge, was the distinctive tread of a boot. The boot was not just any piece of footwear. Its tread pattern, its specific design, was immediately recognizable to the trained eye. It was a type of heavy-duty, lug-soled boot, commonly associated with survivalist communities and individuals with extensive outdoor survival training. Further analysis of the gear indicated it was a type of specialized footwear favored by certain local groups known for their self-sufficiency and their withdrawal from mainstream society. This visual confirmation, the clear evidence of another person's presence and their specialized gear, transformed the narrative from a mystery of disappearance into a stark reality of potential abduction or worse. The boots, the final tangible link to Marcy's assailant, were more than just discarded footwear. They were a chilling signature, a clue that pointed towards a specific and potentially dangerous segment of the local population. The investigation now had a face, or at least a soul, to pursue. In the quiet town of Oakhaven, nestled in the foothills of the very mountains where Marcy Olson vanished, a lone hiker named Curtis Adams had previously reported an unsettling experience. Several months prior, during an outing on a trail not far from where Marcy was last seen, Curtis claimed he had been trailed for a significant distance. His account, however, was met with polite skepticism. In the vastness of the wilderness, feeling watched or followed was not uncommon, and without concrete evidence, his report was filed away as a perceived uneasiness rather than a confirmed threat. Curtis had described a persistent feeling of being observed, a prickling sensation on the back of his neck that made him constantly turn around. Each time he did, he glimpsed a figure in the dense foliage, a man dressed in camouflage, who seemed to vanish or conceal himself the moment Curtis tried to get a clearer look. The man never made direct contact, never spoke, but his persistent, elusive presence unnerved Curtis deeply. His report was documented, but it lacked the gravity to trigger an immediate, in-depth investigation. However, after the graphic footage from Marcy's camera surfaced, depicting the boot entering the frame and her hushed plea to stop, Curtis Adams felt a profound sense of urgency. He recognized the unsettling parallels to his own experience, the feeling of being stalked by an unseen presence in the wilderness. He reached out to the authorities again, his voice filled with a newfound conviction, demanding that his previous report be re-examined in light of this new evidence. This time, Curtis's account was met with a different level of attention. The investigators, armed with the visual evidence from Marcy's camera, listened intently to his description of the camouflaged stalker. They noted the chilling similarities between the man Curtis described and the implication of another person's presence during Marcy's final moments. Curtis elaborated on his encounter, explaining how the stalker seemed to possess an uncanny ability to blend with the environment, disappearing behind trees or into thick underbrush whenever Curtis attempted to pinpoint his location. This elusive behavior, coupled with the camouflage attire, suggested a deliberate attempt at concealment, a practiced skill in staying hidden within the natural landscape. Investigators then cross-referenced Curtis's description with historical missing persons reports and any pertinent information related to individuals known to frequent the more remote sections of the mountain range. A particular case from 2008 resurfaced, a man who had gone missing from a local veterans shelter, an establishment known within certain circles for its emphasis on survival training and wilderness lore. This individual was described as having expertise in camouflage and an advanced understanding of survival techniques. The previous shelter was a place that catered to veterans, many of whom had specialized military training, including covert operations and woodland survival. The description of the person from the 2008 missing persons report began to align disturbingly with the profile of the elusive figure Curtis had encountered. The possibility that Marcy's stalker was someone with extensive, possibly military-grade, survival training and a history of disappearing into the wilderness became a very real and terrifying prospect. The convergence of Curtis Adams's eyewitness account, the evidence from Marcy's camera, and this resurfaced missing persons case began to paint a disturbing picture. It suggested that Marcy might have encountered not just a random individual, but someone who was highly skilled in evasion and concealment, someone who operated with a practiced stealth within the remote wilderness. The man in camouflage, previously dismissed as a fleeting observation, now represented a tangible suspect, a ghost from the past who had seemingly re-emerged in the present. Elias Thorne, the man from the veterans' shelter, was now a person of intense interest. Armed with the geographical metadata extracted from the final frames of Marcy Olsen's camera, investigators were able to pinpoint the approximate location where the device took its last recordings. This high-tech data, combined with Curtis Adams's detailed descriptions and the cryptic notes on the map found in the garage, allowed law enforcement to map out a hidden, unmarked trail. It was a path that deviated significantly from the official Treeline Ridge Trail, a route seemingly deliberately concealed from casual hikers. As they began to meticulously traverse this clandestine route, the search teams discovered a series of unsettling signs. They identified handmade markers, subtle carvings on trees, and strategically placed stones that indicated a person had traveled this way regularly. Further along, they found evidence of a small, primitive fire pit, the ashes cold but the remnants of recent use unmistakable. Scattered amongst the undergrowth, they also found small, torn scraps of unfamiliar clothing, consistent with rugged, outdoor wear that had perhaps been discarded or snagged. The signs pointed toward an established, albeit makeshift, camp. As the investigators cautiously approached what appeared to be a crude shelter constructed from branches and tarpaulin, a figure suddenly erupted from the dense surrounding foliage. A man, gaunt and wild-eyed, bolted from the makeshift dwelling, disappearing once more into the dense, unforgiving wilderness. This sudden appearance and immediate flight triggered a massive manhunt. The individual, now confirmed as a fugitive, was known to be familiar with this treacherous terrain, possessing an intimate knowledge of the hidden routes and natural cover. A week-long, high-stakes search commenced, involving specialized tracking units, aerial surveillance, and extensive ground patrols. The fugitive's ability to evade capture, moving through the rugged landscape like a phantom, tested the skills of even the most seasoned pursuers. The manhunt culminated in a tense standoff. Cornered in a remote, rocky outcropping, the man finally surrendered. He was exhausted, disheveled, and disoriented, but remarkably unharmed. As the tactical teams cautiously approached and secured him, the lead investigator prepared himself for the inevitable questions concerning Marcy Olsen. But when the man finally spoke, his words were not the expected confession or denial. They were cryptic, disjointed, and far more disturbing than anyone had anticipated. He spoke in riddles, his gaze unfocused, his voice raspy. He uttered barely coherent phrases that hinted at a deliberate narrative, a purpose behind Marcy's presence. She wasn't supposed to see it, he muttered, his eyes darting wildly, then settling on the lead detective with a strange intensity. The symbols, they wanted them exposed. She was sent to show the signs. His pronouncements offered no direct admission of guilt, but spoke volumes about a perceived mission and Marcy's role within it. The fragmented statements immediately sent a shockwave through the investigative team. Was this the confession of a disturbed individual caught in a moment of delirium, or was there a deeper, more complex layer to the events? The mention of symbols and Marcy being sent suggested a conspiracy, a purpose beyond a random act of violence, hinting at an organized group or agenda. Authorities initially suspected that the man suffered from severe mental illness, that his words were the product of delusion. His appearance and demeanor lent credence to this theory. However, the online world reacted with a predictable fervor. True crime forums and social media platforms exploded with debate. Some believed he was a pawn, manipulated by others who remained in the shadows, while others demanded that the authorities pursue his cryptic claims with renewed vigor, believing he held the key to a larger truth. Marcy's family, already devastated by her presumed death, was now further shaken by the unsettling implications of his words, plunging them into an even deeper abyss of uncertainty and fear about what their daughter had truly stumbled upon. In the wake of the fugitive's dramatic capture and his bewildering pronouncements, a significant legal battle commenced. A wrongful death lawsuit was quickly filed against the state park system, alleging negligence and gross misconduct in their failure to adequately monitor and maintain the trails under their jurisdiction. The lawsuit argued that the park's lack of vigilance had directly contributed to the deaths and disappearances of hikers, including Marcy Olson. This legal action spurred a renewed journalistic investigation into the ranger district responsible for the Treeline Ridge Trail. Digging deeper into public records and interviewing former employees, journalists uncovered a series of alarming local warnings that had previously gone unaddressed. Over the preceding 6 years, it emerged 3 other hikers had mysteriously vanished within that same unforgiving stretch of wilderness. All 3 were identified as women, and all were hiking alone at the time of their disappearances. The pattern was stark and undeniable. 3 women, solo hikers, disappearing in the same area over a relatively short period. The implications were chilling. Could these disappearances be mere coincidences, unfortunate tragedies in a dangerous landscape? Or, as the mounting evidence suggested, was this indicative of a repeat pattern of predatory behavior that authorities had either failed to recognize or deliberately ignored? The questions shifted from finding a single perpetrator to uncovering a systemic failure. Meanwhile, the man apprehended at the makeshift shelter continued to be a focal point of intense scrutiny. While authorities leaned towards a diagnosis of serious mental illness, citing his delusional ramblings about missions and symbols, the online community remained divided. The internet forums buzzed with theories of elaborate cover-ups and shadowy organizations. Some believed the man was a patsy, his capture and confession a deliberate maneuver to silence a story he was too weak to fully articulate. Others, however, saw him as a key witness, a victim himself who was being silenced by the very people who benefited from the secrets he alluded to. This online fervor added another layer of pressure and complexity to the official investigation. Marcy's family, already reeling from the horror of her disappearance and the chilling implications of the fugitive's statements, received another devastating blow from the forensic lab. Results from an analysis of Marcy's hiking coat, recovered near where the supposed shelter was found, confirmed the presence of unusual chemical traces. These traces identified a specific compound that, upon further investigation, was found to be exclusively used in specialized military-grade storage and preservation contexts. This revelation sent a fresh wave of shock and disbelief through the family and law enforcement. The presence of such a compound on Marcy's clothing suggested an unexpected and deeply unsettling connection to military operations or clandestine activities. Was it possible that Marcy had stumbled upon something far more significant and potentially dangerous than anyone had imagined? The compound's unique origin implied an organized entity, a group with access to classified materials, and it further fueled the suspicions that her disappearance was not a random act of violence, but part of a larger, more sinister plot. The mystery deepened, intertwining the wildness of the mountains with the hidden machinations of clandestine forces. In the agonizing months following Marcy Olson's presumption of death, her sister, Sarah, channeled her grief and frustration into action. She established the Marcy Olson Awareness Fund, an initiative aimed at raising awareness about hiking safety, promoting responsible outdoor practices, and advocating for stricter protocols in national parks to prevent similar tragedies. The fund also served as a platform to keep Marcy's memory alive and to maintain public attention on her unsolved case. While managing the fund and coordinating efforts, Sarah undertook the daunting task of cataloging and organizing Marcy's personal effects. Armed with a sense of duty and a lingering hope for answers, she began meticulously clearing out Marcy's laptop, a repository of her digital life, her creative endeavors, and her communications. It was a painful process, sifting through countless files, photos, and partially completed projects. Amidst the organized chaos of digital files, Sarah discovered an unsent email draft. The email was addressed to a prominent hiking podcast host, someone Marcy had admired and occasionally interacted with online. The contents of this draft, however, sent a fresh wave of chilling realization through Sarah. It was dated just 3 days before Marcy's disappearance, offering a premonition of the danger she was about to face. In the draft, Marcy detailed a disturbing discovery she had made during one of her recent excursions in the vicinity of the Treeline Ridge Trail, an excursion that predated her final hike. She claimed she had stumbled upon a hidden space, a secluded area that was disturbing in content. Her description was stark: a place covered in a significant number of deer bones, arranged in what seemed like an unnatural, almost ritualistic manner. Furthermore, Marcy reported that buried nearby this macabre site, she found what appeared to be someone's camping gear. The gear was partially obscured, suggesting it had been deliberately hidden, perhaps for an extended period. Her tone in the email conveyed a sense of unease and confusion, a palpable feeling that she had uncovered something she was not meant to see. The significance of the discovered email was immense. It provided concrete evidence that Marcy had encountered something unsettling and potentially suspicious in the wilderness shortly before her final hike. This was not a casual observation. She had felt compelled to document it and share it with a trusted contact. The detailed description of deer bones and hidden camping gear painted a picture of a site that was far from innocent, hinting at illicit activities or something far more sinister. The fact that this draft remained unsent was agonizing for Sarah. If Marcy had sent it, if her discovery had been shared more widely, perhaps the authorities might have investigated sooner, altering the course of events. The email draft served as a stark, tragic reminder of the missed connections and the narrow window of opportunity that may have existed to intervene. It confirmed that Marcy's final hike was not an isolated incident, but potentially a direct consequence of her brave, albeit ill-fated, exploration into the darker secrets of the mountains. The unsent email was a ghost of a warning, a testament to a discovery that could have saved her life. The grave revelations unearthed by the Marcy Olson Awareness Fund and the subsequent legal pressures prompted the Federal Bureau of Investigation to re-evaluate and reopen several earlier unsolved hiker disappearances in and around the Treeline Ridge National Park. The pattern of missing women, the alarming proximity in time and location, and now Marcy's own premonition of discovering a hidden, disturbing site, demanded a comprehensive re-investigation. Investigators began by painstakingly re-examining existing evidence from these prior cold cases. This included archived witness statements, recovered personal effects, and any available photographic or video documentation from the missing hikers. They were particularly looking for any recurring details, any overlooked clues that might link these disparate disappearances. During this meticulous review of old case files, a peculiar and deeply unsettling anomaly began to emerge. In the grainy, often distorted footage from the body cameras of park rangers or dash cams from initial responding vehicles, a specific visual appeared across several of the earlier missing persons investigations. It was a flash of red, a bright red scarf, seen draped around the same distinctive tree. This tree, a gnarled, ancient pine, was located in a relatively remote section of the park, not far from the periphery of Treeline Ridge. What made this sighting so unnerving was its recurrence across different incident reports, dated years apart. The red scarf appeared in videos from the disappearance of one hiker in 2018, another in 2020, and was also noted in a hiker's recovered personal photograph from 2014. The consistent presence of the red scarf on that specific tree, across multiple incidents and years, suggested it was not a casual placement, but potentially a deliberate marker or a chilling calling card. Driven by this new, tangible lead, a team of FBI agents and park rangers returned to the precise location of the tree seen in the archival footage. The area was overgrown, and the passage of time had weathered the tree and its surroundings. They meticulously searched the ground around the base of the ancient pine, looking for anything out of the ordinary, anything that might have been disturbed or concealed over the years. Their persistent efforts were rewarded when they discovered an anomaly in the soil. Beneath a thick layer of pine needles and loose earth, just at the root system of the marked tree, they found something buried. It was a large, canvas-wrapped bundle, surprisingly well preserved despite its interment. The bundle was heavy, sealed tightly, and gave off an almost palpable sense of unease, even in its inert state. The discovery of this buried object, directly linked to the recurring visual of the red scarf on the tree, marked a significant breakthrough. It strongly suggested that this location had a deliberate, recurring significance for whoever was involved in these disappearances. The canvas-wrapped bundle held the promise of answers, a tangible piece of evidence that could finally shed light on the fate of the missing hikers, and potentially on Marcy herself. The mystery of the repeated red scarf was no longer just a visual anomaly. It was a pathway to a buried truth, a truth that was now within reach. In the digital forensics lab, the recovered footage from Marcy Olsen's camera was now being subjected to an unprecedented level of scrutiny. Utilizing advanced 4K resolution imaging and sophisticated enhancement software, investigators were able to zoom in on pixels and details that had been previously imperceptible to the naked eye. The chaotic final seconds of the video, the moments of struggle and the muffled pleas, were replayed and analyzed with intense concentration. It was during one of these painstaking frame-by-frame examinations, just before the camera tipped and the audio succumbed to the sounds of a struggle, that a minuscule detail caught an analyst's eye. In the background, partially obscured by a large, irregular rock formation, a faint, almost ghostly glimmer appeared. It was a reflective flash, minute and fleeting, a subtle distortion in the light that seemed out of place amidst the natural textures of the mountainside. With further digital manipulation, enhancing contrast and light sensitivity, the source of the glimmer was identified. It was a piece of mirrored glass, not the casual reflection of sunlight off a natural surface, but the distinct, high-polish sheen of manufactured glass. Further analysis of its reflectivity and composition suggested it was not ordinary glass, but military-grade optical material, the kind used in specialized surveillance equipment or advanced optics. The implications of this discovery were staggering. The presence of military-grade mirrored glass suggested that someone else was present at the scene, someone equipped with tools designed for observation and potentially surveillance. It raised the chilling possibility that Marcy's final moments were not just a struggle for survival, but that she was being observed, perhaps even recorded, by another party. Someone may have been watching, documenting her ordeal, or even orchestrating it from a hidden vantage point. This revelation added a terrifying new dimension to the case. If this mirrored glass was part of a recording device or a sophisticated optical tool used by an observer, then where was it now? The rugged terrain offered countless places to conceal such equipment, and the perpetrator, whoever they were, clearly possessed the skills and the motive to remain hidden. The device, the silent witness, or the tool of the assailant was never found. The mystery, which had already spiraled into depths of conspiracy and violence, now plunged into an even darker realm. It suggested a level of premeditation and organization far beyond a simple encounter or a fit of rage. The calculated use of advanced optics pointed towards professionals, individuals who operated with precision and a clear intent to conceal their actions. The discovery of the faint glint of mirrored glass was both a revelation and a profound source of frustration. It provided concrete evidence of another presence, another unseen participant in Marcy's final moments, but offered no tangible clue to their identity or their whereabouts. The silent, unseen observer remained a ghost in the data, a phantom presence forever lurking just beyond the clarity of the captured moments. The Treeline Ridge case, it seemed, was not just about a missing hiker. It was about a conspiracy of silence and unseen eyes. In the shadow of the towering peaks of the Rockies, a simple yet profound memorial was installed near the Treeline Ridge trailhead. A bronze plaque, etched with Marcy Olsen's name and a poignant tribute to her adventurous spirit, was unveiled. It served as a solemn acknowledgement of her life, a testament to the joy she brought to so many through her travels, and a stark recognition of the tragic mystery that had consumed her final days. Her story had, in a way, concluded. The debates about her fate, the endless speculation online, had at least found an official resting place. But while the plaque marked an end to the search for answers, it did not extinguish the fear that had permeated the region. The area around Treeline Ridge, once a haven for hikers and nature enthusiasts, now carried a palpable aura of dread. Marcy's story, interwoven with the earlier disappearances of other women, had transformed the wilderness into a place of both morbid fascination and palpable danger. The remote beauty of the mountains began to attract a new kind of visitor. True crime enthusiasts, drawn by the unsolved mysteries and the tantalizing hints of conspiracy, began to flock to the trailhead. They came with cameras and curiosity, hoping to capture a glimpse of the wilderness that had claimed Marcy and others. The allure of the unknown, the desire to solve the puzzle, was a powerful draw, even for those who acknowledged the inherent risks. In response to the growing unease and the influx of curious visitors, park authorities significantly tightened access to the area. Foot traffic was more closely monitored, and certain more remote sections of the trail were restricted or closed off entirely. The wilderness, once a symbol of freedom and exploration, was now under increased guard, its secrets fiercely protected. Yet, despite the increased security, the official pronouncements, and the memorial plaque, the whispers of the unknown persisted. Every so often, anonymously posted photographs would appear on obscure online forums. These images, always taken after dark, from a distance, and from the same recognizable angle, depicted the stark silhouette of the Treeline Ridge. They were always taken at night, under the cloak of darkness. These clandestine photographs, appearing sporadically and without explanation, served as an unsettling reminder. They suggested that the wilderness still held its secrets, that an unseen observer continued to watch. The angle, always the same, hinted at someone who knew the terrain intimately, someone who chose the darkness to document a landscape that had become infamous for its hidden dangers. They were a silent, chilling echo of Marcy's final moments, a persistent question mark hanging over the seemingly serene mountain. The mystery of Treeline Ridge remained, not solved, but simply deeper, more veiled, and far more foreboding. The darkness, it seemed, had a watchful eye. The installation of Marcy Olson's memorial plaque marked a somber conclusion to the official search for answers, yet it simultaneously signified a beginning. The tragic narrative of her disappearance, intertwined with the earlier vanishings of other women, had solidified into a cautionary tale that resonated far beyond the local community. The story had sparked intense debates about hiking safety, the responsibilities of park authorities, and the darker undercurrents that can lie hidden beneath seemingly tranquil landscapes. However, such a profound event rarely brings complete closure. Instead, it often breeds persistent unease and a lingering sense of vulnerability. The Treeline Ridge area, once a destination for those seeking solace and adventure in nature, now drew a different kind of attention. It became a pilgrimage site for true crime aficionados, individuals captivated by the unsolved mysteries and the tantalizing suggestions of a hidden narrative within the wilderness. Urban explorers and amateur detectives, armed with maps and theories, ventured into the region, hoping to uncover fragments of truth that had eluded official investigations. This added pressure on local authorities, who grappled with managing the influx of visitors seeking morbid thrills. Consequently, park authorities were compelled to implement more stringent access controls. Patrols increased, and certain trails, particularly those believed to be connected to the disappearances, were either closed to the public or subjected to rigorous monitoring. The majestic wilderness, a symbol of untamed beauty, was increasingly perceived as a place of potential threat, its beauty now overshadowed by the chilling events that had unfolded within its borders. The natural environment, once a source of freedom, was now framed by caution and suspicion. Yet, even with these tightened measures, the enigmatic whispers of the mountains persisted. From time to time, new images would surface on encrypted online forums, shared by anonymous users. These photographs, consistently taken after sundown, depicted the rugged silhouette of the tree-line ridge. The vantage point from which they were captured was always the same, a meticulous mirroring of the angles favored by investigators attempting to reconstruct events. They were silent testaments, not of discovery, but of continued observation. These clandestine images, always shrouded in darkness, suggested a deliberate, ongoing surveillance of the area. The consistent framing indicated a deep familiarity with the terrain and a specific, if unknown, purpose behind the documentation. Was it an individual revisiting the scene of their crimes, a vigilante of sorts, or perhaps a group still operating within the shadows? The photographs offered no explanation, only a chilling reassertion of a hidden presence. The enduring mystery of Treeline Ridge did not lie in the absence of evidence, for evidence existed in fragmented whispers and ghost-like images, but in its interpretation. Marcy Olsen's tale, a somber chronicle of ambition and dread, became a stark reminder that some secrets of the wild remain deeply buried, guarded by the unforgiving landscape and the unseen forces that may inhabit it. The story of Treeline Ridge, etched into the collective consciousness, continued to haunt, a testament to the enduring power of the unknown and the chilling possibility that not all mysteries are meant to be solved. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story from us. We'll see you in the next one.